We spent so much of Agatha All Along just aimlessly wondering if Agatha Harkness had sacrificed her son Nicholas Scratch to obtain the cursed powers of the Darkhold, but with the show's finale, we got the much-needed confirmation that our theories simply could not have been further from the truth. I mean, before the major teen reveal in episode 5, some people even thought Billy was actually Agatha's son, but that theory was pretty much chucked out the window midway through Agatha All Along. In the premiere episode, there was a clever Easter egg which only the sharp-eyed Marvel fans might have spotted. While she was still stuck in Wanda's hex, there was a trophy in one of Agatha's bedrooms with the name Nicholas Scratch etched on it, thus implying that her son could go on to play a role in the series. As the episodes rolled on, we got more references to Nick and the tragic event that tore him away from Agatha. But for most of the season, the real story of Nick Scratch simply stayed just out of reach, apart from some surprising insights into the Witch's Road. But in the two-part finale of Agatha All Along, we finally learned the truth about Nicholas' fate, which turns out to be even more heartbreaking than we'd imagined. What really happened to Agathas Son, and how does it differ from Nicholas Scratch's end in the comics? Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. What did we initially believe about Nicholas Scratch's identity? Even if Nicholas Scratch's full role in Agatha All Along, and how much he tied into Agatha's backstory was never fully revealed throughout the season, it was still quite clear that he's more important than the MCU initially let on. In WandaVision, Marvel gave us Agatha's rabbit, Senor Scratchy, as what seemed like a nod to her connection with Nicholas in the comics. But now, 3 years later, we understood that there was a lot more to that than we first thought, as Agatha All Along took that connection even further. Like in the comics, Nicholas seemed to be Agatha's actual son, even though he didn't grow up to be the powerful magic wielder like his comic counterpart became. At first, it seemed Agatha named the rabbit after Nicholas, as the surprisingly touching tribute to her past trauma. But then, it was more than just an interesting coincidence that the bunny in Agatha's son's bedroom was named Senor Scratchy. Plus, when Teen, aka Billy, carried the rabbit with him when the Salem 7 showed up, it obviously led some fans to speculate at the possibility that Agatha's son's soul was contained within the bunny rabbit. But if you've seen the finale, you know what a disappointing miss that one was. But again, since the promotional material for Agatha All Along showed an image of the Darkhold wrapped in a crib, many fans had theorized that Agatha Harkness may have sacrificed her young son to obtain the Book of the Damned, as it's filled with spells and contains dark magic, described from ancient engravings created by Chthon. Agatha owned the Darkhold before WandaVision, and in the beginning of the show, getting the Darkhold back felt like the key plot point in Agatha All Along. This theory only gained more traction when Jennifer Kale asked Agatha if Billy was another child sacrifice, which suggested that Agatha sacrificing a child might be common knowledge in the witch community. Again, in episode 3, Jennifer pulled the teen aside to warn him not to trust Agatha. When he asked her why, Jennifer revealed that there were rumors of how Agatha traded Nicholas for the Book of the Damned. Later again, and through many miles of tricks and trials, where each witch suffered terrible visions brought on by the poisoned wine they had to drink to advance to the next trial, Alice saw her mother, Jennifer envisioned the man who bound her magic, and Lilia was haunted by her old coven. Agatha, on the other hand, envisioned a crib in the corner of the kitchen. When she walked over and pulled back the comforter, Agatha discovered the Darkhold hidden inside, which pretty much startled her. But when the others asked what she saw, she quickly brushed them off. So you can understand why all of us collectively stayed true to the theory of Agatha sacrificing her son for more power. I mean, there's no saying what this unhinged woman was capable of. Now, again in episode 5, when Alice got sucked dry by Agatha while trying to protect her, Teen noticed that the Ouija board was spelling out the name Nicholas Scratch. Suddenly, a little boy's voice called out, pleading Agatha to stop, and she does, but not before Alice's life force fades away. Although Teen failed to save Alice, he started to piece together what Agatha's son really meant to her. Nicholas Scratch's attempt to communicate with Agatha through the Ouija board finally put all our bizarre theories about Teen being Agatha's son to rest. But at least we knew that he died as a child and latched onto the theory that the boy became a victim of Agatha in her relentless quest for more power. After Billy Maximoff's identity was confirmed, so much was happening that we low-key forgot about Nicholas Scratch, until of course the finale of Agatha All Along left us screaming, crying, and throwing up. What do we know about Nicholas Scratch's backstory in Agatha All Along? Agatha All Along kept us guessing about Agathas Son, but in episode 9, we finally learned that even the most powerful witch once felt utterly powerless when it came to protecting the only person she ever loved in the world, her son Nicky. As expected, it's quite a heartbreaking story that sheds light on why Agatha has become such a force of chaos today. So the last episode of Agatha All Along begins in 1750 Massachusetts, in a quiet, secluded forest, where we see a young Agatha, cloaked in purple, running through the woods and clutching her stomach as she goes into labor. When she desperately wishes for help, Agatha notices Rio, aka Death, draped in green and waiting for her. Agatha pleads with Rio to spare her unborn child's life, but Rio simply says that all she can offer her is time. When Agatha asks how much, Rio simply vanishes before answering, and from that moment on, Agatha lives with the constant fear that Death will come back for Nicholas. After Agatha gives birth alone, she cradles her newborn son and murmurs tenderly that he was made from scratch, as she spoke no spell or incantation to birth him, and the child grew in her own womb. This backstory sheds light on the name Nicholas Scratch, and hints at two possible origins for Agathas Son. One interpretation is that Nicholas was her natural-born child with a mortal man, which seems plausible, especially since he shows no clear powers and is rather frail. Interestingly, even in the comics, Nicholas' father is never identified. But there's also the chance that Agatha, as a powerful witch, could have magically created Nicholas from nothing, much like Wanda did with her own children in WandaVision. If so, it would add a meaningful connection between Agatha and Wanda's journeys. But I don't think that's the real deal, given that she made him from scratch. Regardless of Nicholas' origins, he and Agatha set out on a dark path together, hunting other witches. I mean, just days after her son was born, Agatha approached a protected coven of witches with her baby, and feigning meekness, she asks for food. The forest witch eyes her suspiciously, but welcomes her into their circle when Agatha mentions that she and her baby haven't eaten in days. After breaking into their protected community, Agatha smiles shyly, only to turn on them in an instant, and drain them of their power without a hint of regret. As baby Nicholas giggles, Agatha smiles down at him, and mentions how she thinks they were going to be very good at this. Then the show takes us to a 6-year time jump, and very soon it becomes clear that Agatha has been teaching Nicholas her ways. The boy has learned to steal and run, in order to lure unsuspecting witches to their home, so Agatha can absorb the essence of each witch, and drain them of their powers. One day, an innocent Nicholas asks his mother why she kills witches, and Agatha explains that for her, it was a matter of survival. When he wonders if they could just stay with the witches and live peacefully together, Agatha shakes her head, saying that if they did, those witches would try to kill them instead. Which I think was quite a strange, evasive answer that doesn't fully explain her motives. Maybe Agatha believes that by becoming as powerful as possible, she can protect Nicholas from the tragic fate that awaits him, even if she knows deep down it might not work. Because later, when Nicky asks his mother for food, she has to remind him that while she can do many things with her magic, she can't heal him or protect him from what's coming, knowing that one day Death will return for her boy. There's also a chance that she thinks these sacrifices will keep Death satisfied, enough to spare her son, and for a while, it even seems to work. Nicholas and Agatha created the famous Ballad of the Witch's Road. Ironically, it was actually a young Nicholas who starts singing an early version of the Ballad of the Witch's Road, but instead of the main verse, the child would sing about walking down the windy road instead of the Witch's Road, and Agatha always joins him, with the two of them enjoying the moment together. As time goes by, Agatha and her son slowly put together the lyrics to the Ballad of the Witch's Road, calling it the Windy Road. One day, Nicholas performs the song in a tavern to collect money, while Agatha quietly moves through the distracted crowd, encouraging others to reward him as well. A curious red-headed witch then asks him where he had learned such an interesting tune. She also notices that Nicholas looked quite unwell, but when she offered him a warm meal, the boy politely declined, saying his mother needed him home. He later tries to convince his angry mother that they could kill more witches tomorrow, and as night falls and they try to drift off to sleep while singing the song of the windy road together. Later, at the dead of night, the inevitable moment that Agatha had dreaded finally arrives, as Nicholas wakes up to see Rio waving at him with a green flame flickering in her hand. Before curiously approaching her, he picks up something from the blanket and ultimately leaves with Rio. The next morning, when Agatha suddenly wakes to find her son dead, a wave of horror washes over her and she cries out, begging for more time with the only soul she has ever loved. With trembling hands, she digs a grave for him and sings the ballad softly before tucking a piece of his hair into her locket as she lays him to rest while mentioning how she buried her own heart with him. In that moment, the Three Swords tarot card from Lilia's vision captures her pain and guilt perfectly, as Agatha had the power to wield the most potent magic and take countless lives, but when it came to her son, she could not do anything. Agatha Harkness turned an innocent song into a trap for the next 300 years. While Agatha was mourning Nicholas' death over his grave, a blonde witch overheard her singing the ballad and interrupted, asking where the mythical road was since she seemed so familiar with the song. Agatha, frustrated at the disruption during her son's funeral, initially felt anger bubbling up inside her, but then a crafty idea strikes her when the young woman tells her that the road offers a prize worth the danger for witches who are brave and true. After she asks Agatha if she might guide her, Agatha acknowledges the woman's sincerity and assures her that she knows the way by heart, but first they need to gather a coven. Once they assemble a group of women to conjure the rumored road, Agatha cleverly lures the witches in, just like we saw her attempt to do in episode 2. She scoffs at them, calling their efforts pathetic and embarrassing. As the women attempt to unleash their magic, Agatha drains their powers and their essence, leaving them lifeless in her wake. This clever scheme works every time, as Agatha gathers covens under the pretense of exploring the road, even though it doesn't actually exist. She manages to pull this con off for centuries, maintaining the legend, and even admitting to Billy that this was her plan when they met in her basement. As a montage begins, we see Agatha across various time periods, each look reflecting the fashion of that era as she steadily gains more power. The pattern continues for centuries, and with each successful con trick, she only grows stronger. The scene all blends together as we flash back to the Ballad from episode 2, where she tried to manipulate Alice, Sharon Davis, Jen, and Lilia to walk the road, so she could steal their power. However, during the encounter, Billy proves powerful enough to actually create a road with his own mind, even if he did so subconsciously. So it makes sense why Agatha was so shocked when the glowing blue door to the Witch's Road appeared. Is it possible for Nicholas Scratch to return? In her final challenge on the Witch's Road, Agatha buried a piece of Nick's hair that she had saved in the dirt of the cracks in her grow room. Using her own tear as a catalyst, she tried to plant a seed to bring him back to life, and as a result, a dandelion sprouted from the spot where she buried the hair just before the entire room collapsed around her. After the road throws her out into the real world, Agatha finds herself face to face with death. Even after Billy juices her up with his own powers, their combined abilities prove quite futile in front of Rio's might. So Agatha decides to sacrifice her own life to save Billy. When he refuses to let her sacrifice herself, Agatha then tells Billy he's not a bad person, and he returns the sentiment. Then, in a surprising turn of events, Billy tells Rio that he would go with her, and Agatha appears to betray him, agreeing to let him go without even a hint of struggle. Basically, she tricks him into offering his own life, allowing Rio to finally take him. But when Billy reaches out to her telepathically, asking if this is how Nick died, something changes in Agatha after hearing this, as she steps up to Rio and kisses her, letting death's black smoke swirl around them. Rising in the air, she looks peaceful as life leaves her and she falls back to the ground. As Rio gazes at Agatha's body sinking into the earth, Billy picks up her brooch and leaves. But eventually, at the end, we see that Agatha returned as a gray-haired ghost in Billy's room. She clarified that she did not sacrifice herself for him, but it was really more of a calculated risk on her part. Later, when Billy tries to banish her, Agatha finally reveals that she cannot move on because she's not ready to face Nicholas again. While the first season ends with Agatha and Billy reconciling before going out the bright white light-emitting door, I think there are a lot of tiny details in the show that leave the door open for Nicholas Scratch's return in the Marvel Universe, should the creators ever choose to revisit this character. It might not seem essential now, but that dandelion seed which Agatha had definitely planted and sprouted during the last trial of Billy's hexed-up Witch's Road might have stood as a foreshadowing or something circling around Nicholas' rebirth. Even if he comes back as a ghost, it's possible that Agatha will reunite with her son, now that she's also a ghost. Honestly, it's Marvel. Anything could happen. How did Nicholas Scratch die in the comics? So within the comics, the character of Nicholas Scratch was created by George Perez and Len Wein. He made his comic debut in Fantastic Four issue number 185 back in 1977 and was introduced as the son of Agatha Harkness. Together, they were originally part of New Salem, Colorado, a hidden town of witches and warlocks who sought to escape the judgment of the outside world, with Agatha being the original leader of this community. Interestingly, in the comics, Nicholas' name came from English folklore by the amalgamation of euphemistic names like Old Nick and Mr. Scratch, both of which are alternate names for the devil. So it's not rocket science for anyone to understand the supervillain hint in his moniker. To live up to his supervillain antics, Nicholas turned against his mother after she left New Salem to live a more ordinary life as a nanny to Franklin Richards of the Fantastic Four. After she was gone, Nicholas felt betrayed by her for leaving him behind years before, so he somehow managed to rally up the residents of New Salem against her by convincing them that Agatha had exposed their community to the modern world. As a result, the residents of New Salem helped him kidnap Franklin and Agatha to bring them back to New Salem. She was almost burned at the stake, but fortunately rescued by the Fantastic Four right on time. Later, when the townsfolk learned of his deception, they turned on Nicholas, followed by which Agatha stripped him of his powers. Later on, Nicholas was exiled to the Dark Realm, where he became a servant of Dormammu, in the hopes of becoming the next Sorcerer Supreme. But this was just the beginning for Nicholas, as he tried to use his manipulative skills on the heroes. But this time, Agatha stands in his way. Not only does she manage to defeat him, but she also disowns him, making it clear that she won't support his dark ambitions any longer. More recently in the comics, Nicholas had teamed up with Mephisto, who's Marvel's version of the devil. After his conflict with Agatha and the Fantastic Four, Nicholas set his sights on taking over the town of Centerville, where he eventually became the mayor. It wasn't until superhero Patsy Walker arrived in town that his sinister intentions came to light. After assessing the situation in her hometown, Patsy decides to take action, ultimately defeating Nicholas and accusing him of being one of Mephisto's puppets. However, it was later revealed that Nicholas' true master was not Mephisto, but Dormammu, and by aligning himself with Dormammu, Nicholas was actually securing his own path to becoming the Sorcerer Supreme. Now, Nicholas Scratch's big moment came in the Resurrection of Nicholas Scratch storyline in Marvel Knights 4, where Scratch planned to resurrect the powerful cosmic entity Shuma Gorath by using the abilities of both the Fantastic Four and Salem 7. However, the two teams soon saw through Scratch's manipulations, put aside their differences, and teamed up with Doctor Strange and the alchemist Diablo to banish Scratch to Hell. So even if he's been banished a good couple of times, the comic book version of Nicholas Scratch was far from naive and never exactly met a tragic end like Agatha's 6-year-old in the show. And that's it for this video. It was oddly comforting to know that even after all the horrible things she's done in life, there was one name that held Agatha back from becoming the worst version of herself. Agatha's soft corner for Billy came from the point of similarities he shared with her long-dead son. Every time Billy saw goodness in Agatha's otherwise antagonistic nature, it reminded her of her time with Nikki, the only soul who made her feel like she belonged. What do you guys think? Will we see a reunion between this mother-son duo in the future? Let us know about your thoughts and theories in the comment box below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone!